In 1999, a 29-year-old software engineer named Brian Acton applied for a job at Facebook. Rejected. Applied to Twitter. Rejected again. He posted both rejection letters on Twitter with a note saying he was looking forward to what comes next. What came next was WhatsApp, which he co-founded and sold to Facebook in 2014 for $19 billion. The same company that would not hire him paid him $19 billion 13 years later. That story gets told as inspiration. It should be told as a warning, because the gap between what Brian Acton's labor was worth as an employee and what it was worth as an owner is not a fluke. It is a precise, structural, repeatable pattern, and most people are permanently on the wrong side of it without knowing it. This is not a video about quitting your job. It is about a specific mathematical gap between owning a piece of something and being paid to operate it, and why the financial industry has $1 trillion incentive to make sure you never think too clearly about which side of that gap you are building on. My name is Tom. I have spent years reading compensation structures, equity agreements, and wealth data behind how money actually concentrates. If you have ever worked hard at a company and watched founders and early investors walk away with outcomes that bore no resemblance to what your labor produced, subscribe and give this a thumbs up. By the end of this, you will understand the exact mechanism behind that gap, why salary optimization is one of the most quietly dangerous financial strategies most people follow, and what 3 specific moves shift you from the labor side of the equation to the capital side. Start with math most people have heard but never actually sat with. Buffett has said that if he had to earn his money through labor alone, working 8 hours a day, he could not make more than a few $100,000 a year. Not because he is not smart, because there is a ceiling on what labor can produce that has nothing to do with how hard you work. Your labor scales as fast as you can personally work. Capital scales while you sleep. This is not a metaphor. It is the actual mechanism behind every large fortune in recorded history. Here is the image that makes it concrete. You own a vending machine. You fill it once a week. It generates $20 a day whether you are there or not. Now imagine you own 1,000 vending machines across 5 cities. They generate $20,000 a day. You still fill them weekly or you hire someone. You scaled the system, not your hours. Your labor became the setup cost, not the ongoing revenue source. That is the ownership model. Most people spend their entire financial lives thinking they are optimizing the vending machine when they are actually just being a very efficient coin collector for someone else's machines. Here is the false belief this video is correcting. The common understanding is that the path to wealth is earning more. Get the raise, get the promotion, move to a higher-paying field. All of this is true in a limited sense and deeply misleading in the larger one. Earnings optimization makes you a more valuable employee, which means you generate more returns for the owners of the system you work inside. The ceiling on personal wealth in an employment structure is fundamentally different from the ceiling in an ownership structure, and the gap between those two ceilings is where most people's financial lives quietly get decided. Here are the numbers. The median American household income is approximately $78,000 a year. The median household net worth is approximately $192,000. Run that math. After a full working career, most households have accumulated roughly 2.5 years of their own income. Decades of labor and discipline producing roughly what you would have if you saved your entire salary for 30 months. Now, the ownership level. The top 1% has a median net worth of approximately $11 million. A substantial portion got there through one mechanism. They owned equity in something that grew, a business, real estate, early-stage stock. The labor they contributed was real, but the wealth was not from the labor. It was from the ownership stake that the labor allowed them to build. Here is the psychological trap. Most people who understand this intellectually still do not act on it. The reason is what I call the salary security illusion. A salary feels safe because it is predictable. You know what is coming on the 1st and 15th. Ownership income feels risky because it is variable and sometimes takes years to materialize. So people optimize for the safe thing and defer the risky thing. The problem is that over 30 years, the salary path produces 2.5 years of accumulated income, and the ownership path can produce 20 or 50 times that. The thing that feels safe is actually the slower path. And the financial industry reinforces this constantly because salaried employees with predictable income and anxiety about the future are the ideal financial product customer. An ownership-minded person asks different questions and is a much harder sell. Here is the case study. Marcus and Elena graduate with the same degree in 2005, both starting at $65,000 a year. Marcus optimizes his career for 20 years, promoted, earns $140,000 by his mid-40s, contributes to his 401k. By 2025, he has $400,000 in retirement savings and $100,000 in home equity. $500,000 total after 20 years. Elena does the same thing for 5 years. Then she launches a small service business on the side in her field. Nothing for 2 years. Then $30,000 a year. She reinvests it. By year 7, it generates $120,000 annually. She leaves her job. By 2025, the business is worth approximately $2 million by standard revenue multiples, her home is paid off, and she has $250,000 in investments. $2.4 million total. Same 20 years. Same starting point. $500,000 versus $2.4 million. The difference is not luck or talent. It is the structure of what each person was building. Here is the 3-move protocol. Move 1. Find the smallest viable ownership position you can take right now, not necessarily starting a company from scratch. Identifying what you can own a piece of, a rental property, an online business, or income-producing asset. Shares in something at a stage where equity is accessible. A royalty stream. The goal is not to make you rich immediately. It is to get your financial architecture off the pure labor model and into something where capital works alongside your hours. Move 2. Convert your existing labor into equity wherever possible. If you work for a company, ask about stock options or equity compensation. Negotiate for it even at the expense of some salary. Start something on the side that you own completely, even if small. The psychological shift that comes from owning something producing income independent of your hours changes how you see every other financial decision you make. Move 3. Treat your salary as funding, not as the product. Your salary is seed capital for building something you own, not a destination, not a reward. The funding mechanism. High earners who treat income as a consumption resource and people who treat income as ownership funding will have dramatically different outcomes over 20 years, regardless of the starting gap. This is not about sacrifice. It is about what you are actually building with the resources you already have. 3 things to take away. 1. The gap between labor income and ownership income is a structural mathematical fact, not inspirational content. Salary optimization builds a ceiling. Ownership builds a floor that keeps rising. 2. The salary security illusion is the specific psychological trap keeping most people optimizing the wrong variable for 3 decades. The predictable paycheck feels safe. Statistically, it is the slower path to financial security, not the faster one. 3. You do not have to choose between employment and ownership. The move is to treat employment as funding for ownership, not a substitute for it. Brian Acton did not accidentally build a $19 billion company. He built something he owned. The company that rejected his labor paid $19 billion for his equity. Those are not 2 different stories. They are the same story told from 2 sides of the same equation. The question is which side you are on. See you in the next video.